Welcome to another 21 Hats Dashboard. I'm Lauren Feldman, and I'm here with John Arensmeyer, who is founder and CEO of Small Business Majority, an advocacy group for businesses and entrepreneurs. Welcome back, John.
Good to be here, Lauren.
Always great to have you, John. I know you've been reaching out and talking to small business owners. This is such an interesting, difficult time. What are you hearing?
First and foremost, that the biggest concern are these tariffs. And I know you've done a great job covering that in 21 Hats. And we've done a lot of, continued outreach and conversations with business owners and trying to communicate their voices to policymakers on both sides of the aisle and to the administration. And, I know we've talked about this before on previous podcasts, so I'll just leave it that does continue to be the biggest issue. That said, we have a quarterly Voice of Main Street small business survey we do of our network, and we just released the results of the most recent survey we did, and we asked them about other issues because we've spent so much time covering tariffs otherwise, and we asked a lot about access to capital, and access to capital continues to be a huge concern of small businesses. We found that 50% of small business owners have taken steps to access capital recently. Only 1/3 have secured it. And they are, the 1/4 say that the funding that they did receive was insufficient.
Do you know how those percentages compare with previous time periods?
This research was done earlier this year, so that was fairly consistent with previous surveys we did. But I think unfortunately, we're going to see those numbers tighten up even more going forward. We just want to emphasize this continues to be a huge issue, and a huge issue for the many businesses in our network who are smaller and are in under-resourced communities. So we can't forget that. We also asked them about, we continue to push for truth in lending legislation in states around the country, and 87% say that they would really welcome much more clarity when they're looking at financial products. Obviously, there's a lot of predatory products out there when they're unable to get funding from traditional sources, whether that's mission-driven lenders or community banks. They're sort of ripe for the picking by predatory lenders, and they just want information. They just want to know. Maybe some of these alternative loans are okay for them, but they want to know what's the APR and what do they actually have to repay. So we've been working on that in states across the country. The other thing we did ask them about was the impact of government, sort of the curtailment of government spending. I know we're probably going to talk a little bit about the president's budget that he submitted a week or two ago, but 2/3 of them really oppose a lot of the cuts to government programs, and 78% are concerned about cuts to the SBA.
Do you have any sense what's really driving the concerns among business owners about the lack of access to capital? Is it getting more difficult, do you think, because of changes in the rules, changes in the economy, or what's driving that concern?
We don't have a system that is set up to provide capital to the vast majority of the smaller businesses, particularly those in under-resourced communities. This is just a perennial problem. And it's one that, as small business owners have been pretty resilient coming out of the pandemic. We've seen a lot more incredible amount of business formation. But this continues to be a drag that there just isn't a ready way for them to get access to responsible capital. And I know we're going to get into it, but cutting programs that underwrite and that support that effort is not going to be helpful.
Some of the rules that were changed are in terms of the organizations that focused on underrepresented entrepreneurs. I think some of those programs have just been cut. Some of them have changed the way they reach out to people. They're using different language. And I think it's based less on demographics and more on financial need, perhaps. Where do you see that?
Well, we've seen cuts across the board, and I can go do a quick summary here, and then kind of get back to where I think is going on. So the SBA, the Small Business Administration, cut their workforce by 43% while loading on responsibility for $1.6 trillion in student loans. So, and that invariably that's gonna hurt service. They've cut a number of programs, including the women's business centers and SCORE. They've supported over the years small business development centers, women's business centers, and SCORE to help provide technical assistance to small businesses. So that's going to hurt. We're concerned about there have been cuts to the workforce at the Treasury Department, and they are still responsible for dispersing the money for the state small business credit initiative, which provides a 10-to-1 leverage the private and public funding and has been successful. And we're concerned that that money isn't going to get out the door. They're sitting on about $4.5 billion of undispersed money. So we're concerned about that. The Department of Commerce eliminated the Minority Business Development Agency, and that included $70 million in essential business support. And they are also sitting on SSBCI money for technical assistance that hasn't been dispersed. There have been cuts at the U.S. Department of Agriculture. So, look, you asked about characterization of these programs. The way we see it is that these programs are benefiting the business owners in communities who need it the most. And the way we see it is that DEI is being used as a club to get rid of the programs. We don't have a problem if you want to change the names. We're all about, is the money going to where it's needed the most? And getting hung up on what it's called, whether it's DI or something else. No, it's about where's the money going. And when you cut money from the Minority Business Development Agency, when you really kill the whole agency, you're cutting off money that's going to where it's needed. And focusing on what it's called doesn't really solve the problem.
Do you have any hope that these decisions can be reversed?
Well, what I didn't mention, and what we did see, is that there was an attempt to eliminate the CDFI fund. And there was immediate pushback from Capitol Hill, a bipartisan pushback. There was a pretty well-organized CDFI caucus of Republicans and Democrats.
Remind us what the CDFI fund is.
It's the Community Development Finance institutions, and they are set up to provide mission-driven loans to communities that need it the most. And a lot of their funding comes from private sources, from financial institutions that do so in order to get credit under the Community Reinvestment Act. But they also get direct support from the government via the CDFI fund. And so there was immediate pushback from the Hill on this, and led by Democratic Senator Mark Warner and Republican Senator Mike Crapo, who's the chair of the Senate Finance Committee, and a whole host of other Democrats and Republicans signed on. That's an example of if you make the case of what the need is and that the need's being taken away, you can get bipartisan support. The only way these programs are going to change is if folks in the administration or Republicans on Capitol Hill alongside Democrats are pushed back. And so the way we're going to get pushback here, the way we're going to push back on these cuts is to make the case through the voices of small businesses, through the research, through the data. And that's what we're doing. And we're simply saying, hey, this is the impact that this would have. Here are voices of small businesses and voices of business support organizations across the country who are going to suffer, and their ability to serve these businesses are going to suffer. We have a coalition we built now, 170 business support organizations and CDFIs around the country who are working with us to get their voices and the voices of small businesses into the dialogue. So that's the way this is going to change, and that's what we're doing.
Got it. You also did another survey related to taxes, correct?
We did, and we did the survey. And as we all know, there's a big debate going on Capitol Hill now about continuing the the 2017 tax bill, and what's going to continue and what's not. And so, and by the way, what I just described in our Voice of Main Street, that's our network. This was a poll we did of all small businesses out there. And I want to stress that when we do this, we ask political affiliation. 71% of the Republicans are or lean Republican, 36% are lean Democrat, and 21% are true independents. So it's a pretty diverse sample with a slight plurality toward Republicans. So 87% said that they agreed that providing small business with tax cuts allows owners to reinvest in their companies, create more jobs. Only 43% felt that was the case with large businesses. They feel that the tax system favors large corporations over small businesses, and 7 in 10 feel that large corporations don't pay their fair share of taxes. We asked about, we have a proposal which has actually now been codified into a bill that was introduced this week in the House that would take the small business on the so-called 199A small business tax deduction and reform it.
John, I think most people don't know it by the term you just used. This
Right.
is the 20% pass-through.
Yeah, it's a pass-through. It allows pass-through entities to deduct 20% of their pass-through income, of their qualified business income.
Right off the top.
Right off the top. But if you do the math, 73% of the financial benefit goes to 4.5% of business, of pass-through entities. So you're really benefiting primarily large pass-through entities sitting at the top.
Not all pass-through entities are small businesses, correct?
Right. Correct. Well, we wouldn't consider them small businesses, and it all depends how you define it. But if you're set up to as an S corporation or other kind of pass-through entity, a partnership, and you're paying taxes through the income to your owners, then the owners are eligible to take the deduction. And so you do the math, and it's pretty simple. The vast majority of the benefit goes to a very small number of businesses. So we have felt for a long time, and we've been advocating for a bottom-up solution. And this bill would basically provide a $25,000 quote-unquote standard deduction. The first $25,000 in business profit can be deducted, period. And then it has a cap on if you, the owner, have income of more than $400,000 for filing jointly. Between $400,000 and $500,000, this phases out, and if a single filer would be phasing out between $200,000 and $300,000. So it's basically saying, if you want to support small businesses, have a provision that actually benefits the smallest businesses, where you're going to have the biggest impact. You're going to have the biggest impact on the economy. You're going to have the biggest impact on hiring. And it is a true small business benefit. And so that's what we've been advocating for. And there's now a bill that's been introduced. And we see this as an opportunity to have a conversation with those who are advocating for just purely extending the law as it is now. We may end up somewhere in the middle. We may end up, this may be an opportunity to have a dialogue. We're not saying it has to end up exactly the way it is in this bill that we support, but we want to stop calling the way it is now a small business deduction. It's a pass-through deduction, and it really should be a pure Main Street small business deduction.
As it is now, my sense, and I follow this stuff pretty carefully, is that too often the conversation is just about whether you keep that deduction or not. And if you're against the 20% pass-through deduction, then you're opposed to small businesses. That seems to be the terms of the debate that I hear most often. Do you have hope that this is going to catch on and change the terms of debate?
Well, we've heard that before. Small business is the most respected institution in this country across, bipartisan. And so if someone's trying to justify something, they'll say it's good for small business. And yeah, there's a small benefit the way it is now at the bottom end to small businesses who have some qualified business income, but it's dwarfed by the benefit to the larger entities. So we want to say, hey, you want to talk about a real small business benefit that's really going to benefit Main Street, the vast majority of businesses that have income such that they would benefit from a bill like this. And we happy to have that conversation. It really depends on who you want to benefit. If you want to benefit the smallest businesses, this is an approach that's going to do it better. If you say no, we just want to support large pass-through entities, well, you can call them what you want, but that's where the benefit's going. I should add, and we do not have a score on this bill yet, so I can't say this definitively, but we've done some back of the envelope calculations, and we believe this will also be a smaller hit on the budget than the way that 199A is right now. So there's actually going to be a benefit to the budget deficit. I can't say that for sure. We don't have a Congressional Budget Office score yet.
Right. Let me ask you this. I certainly take your point that the proposal you're making would benefit a much larger group of small businesses. Is there an argument to be made that the system as it exists now benefits the most successful businesses, and that's a good thing? You're placing your chips on businesses that are succeeding, and that's likely to produce more jobs and more growth?
Look, we have an economy that has a wide range of businesses, but the vast majority of small businesses are small. And they also collectively represent almost half of the economy. They're also the ones that we just talked about, access to capital. They're also the ones that have the biggest challenges in terms of growing. And so they need the benefit. We've seen this incredible surge in, I think, 17 million new business formations in the last 3 or 4 years. We want to give support to those businesses. What's the role of government? The role of government is to step in and plug gaps and provide support where it's not being provided in the private market. I would suspect the vast majority of pass-through entities that are getting benefit from this deduction right now, they don't have a lot of trouble raising money. They're in a position to withstand tariffs better than the very smallest businesses. So if you're wanting to, the goal is to provide this support to the businesses who need it the most. And you can be very successful, Lauren, if you start off as a solo business and you grow to 5 employees and you're serving your community, and there's a whole lot of you across the board, across the country. So this isn't a question of defining what's success. Success is any business that comes in, has a product that people want, that hires people, and you spell that out across the millions of businesses across the country. That is collectively just as much success as a large entity that grows and now doesn't need support from government the way maybe it did at one time.
I hope that conversation reaches the people that need to hear it, because too often I just hear it's if you're for small businesses, then you want the 20% pass-through deduction, and that's the end of the discussion.
Well, you need to look at the facts, and you need to look at just run the math, and it's as simple as that. And then you make a decision. What do you want to do? Do you want to support the largest businesses that already have advantages? It may be due to their hard work and success. More power to them. We do not want to hold them back. But or do you want to say, hey, where's government needed the most? Where are the tax benefits needed the most? And we certainly believe that they're needed the most in the businesses that are newer and starting up and attempting to grow.
You mentioned the proposed budget that President Trump recently released. Obviously, this is not likely to fly through the legislative process in its current form and go straight into law, but it does offer a look at his priorities and where the conversation perhaps starts. What do you make of it?
Well, a lot of it tracked a lot of what I've already talked about and the cuts to the program. So if you can kind of look at everything I described, the SBA and Treasury and Commerce, specifically the Minority Business Development Agency, Agriculture, and you can see you can track that tracks with the proposed budget cuts. The other piece of the budget that is alarming is that it's going to we now see that it has engendered conversation on Capitol Hill on how to pay for it. And one of the things that has popped up is cutting Medicaid. Actually, over 7 million business owners and employees are on Medicaid. And we all know healthcare continues to be a huge stress for small businesses, and it's a hindrance to their growth. So you now put pressure on the system, where you now have a conversation about cutting an essential program, which, by the way, we have seen there are plenty of Republicans on Capitol Hill who are not that happy with this. So we are hopeful that there's going to be a robust debate and conversation, and that we can forestall this, because Medicaid, most people may not realize, is also a small business issue. The other small business issue, and again, this is going to, when you have a budget that puts pressure on these programs, is the premium tax credits under the ACA they've been in place for the last 3 or 4 years. They run out at the end of this year. And that it's a sweet spot of businesses who are getting those premium credits now, who wouldn't get them if we revert back to the way it was before. And that includes a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of small business owners. So the exchanges right now, over half of the participants are small business owners, employees, and self-employed people. So again, it's all connected. And when you're putting forth a budget that is going to require cuts to these vital programs in order to get close to, and we're not going to have a balanced budget, I'm sure, but it gets even, it doesn't completely blow the deficit out, the doors off the deficit. You're putting pressure on programs that the smallest businesses really need.
You're making reference to a number of issues that, as you said, are not traditionally seen as small business issues. What can be done to get legislators and people in general to see them as small business issues?
Well, that's our job, Lauren, is to make sure they're hearing the stories, and that they're getting the facts, and that they're hearing directly from business owners. I think I talked about this on a previous podcast. We had a fly-in earlier this year where we brought small business owners to the Capitol. We met with Republicans and Democrats, and we just wanted them to hear the stories and hear what their needs are. That is, at the end of the day, what it's going to take. And, things may not be characterized as small business per se, but it's up to us to help small business owners communicate to policymakers that, no, these are actually programs that we need, that we benefit from, that really help the entrepreneurial economy, help the 17 million new businesses that have started in the last couple of years. And we're going to continue. That's what we do, and we'll talk to anybody. And we're hopeful that there will be some bipartisan recognition of that. Again, we saw that with the response in the cuts to the City of I Fund, so that was encouraging.
So you're feeling a little bit optimistic?
As with most small business owners, we have to be optimistic and have to be resilient. There are a lot of headwinds. We've talked about them, but. We are optimistic that shedding a light on small business needs is going to be the way to push back on these headwinds.
John Arensmeyer is founder and CEO of Small Business Majority. Thanks for taking the time, John.
Thank you, Lauren.
Have a great week, everybody.